Okay, quick question. Have you ever found yourself deep in a late night real estate spiral? Like it's 1:37 a.m., you're scrolling through Redfin listings, staring at gorgeous kitchens and giant walk-in closets, and thinking, wait, could I actually buy something like this? Then you open a mortgage calculator, type in your salary, and suddenly the dream house turns into a one-bedroom condo next to a highway. Reality hits hard. Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I spend a slightly embarrassing amount of time thinking about money and why so many people have absolutely no clue what they can realistically afford. If you've ever wondered whether you're ready to stop paying your landlord every month, or whether buying a house would turn your budget into a financial horror movie, go ahead and subscribe and hit like if this video saves you from a very expensive mistake. Because here's the thing, no one loves to admit about buying a house in 2025. The old rules? Yeah, they don't really work anymore. Your parents probably bought their first home when mortgage rates were sane, houses didn't cost the same as a tech startup valuation, and college didn't saddle people with five-figure debt before their first job. That world is gone. We're playing an entirely different financial game now. And if you're still using outdated guidelines to figure out what you can afford, you might be setting yourself up for disappointment or a long-term money disaster. Most people think calculating housing affordability is simple. Take your income, multiply it by some magic number you saw online, and boom, there's your home budget. But honestly, that's like trying to solve a puzzle while someone keeps rearranging the pieces. The real answer is a lot more complicated, and honestly, a lot less fun than most people expect. Before we get into numbers that might make you rethink all your life choices, we need to talk about something most people completely ignore. There's a massive difference between what you can afford and what a bank will approve you for. Banks are not your supportive best friend, cheering on your financial wellness. They're businesses that make money by lending money. Sometimes they're perfectly happy to lend you enough cash to stretch your finances to the breaking point. So if a lender says you qualify for a $650,000 mortgage, that doesn't automatically mean you should take it, especially if you enjoy luxuries like groceries and occasionally leaving the house. Traditionally, housing affordability revolves around something called the 28% rule. This guideline says you should not spend more than 28% of your gross income on housing costs. Seems reasonable, right? Well, here's the problem. This rule was invented back when people were recording music on cassette tapes and nobody carried a $1,000 computer in their pocket. It doesn't account for the fact that modern life got dramatically more expensive while incomes didn't really keep up. Think about it. When that rule became popular, people didn't have $500 car payments, $150 internet bills, and student loans that look like a small mortgage. They didn't have streaming subscriptions, meal kit deliveries, cloud storage plans, and monthly apps charging their credit cards. The financial world changed completely. But somehow, we're still using guidelines from an era when a gallon of gas cost pocket change. Now let's talk about what housing actually costs today. When you rent, your monthly payment is refreshingly simple. You pay the rent, you live there. If the dishwasher explodes or the heater dies, you call the landlord and it becomes their headache. But when you buy a house, oh wow, that's when the real adventure begins. Your mortgage payment is just the opening act. You've also got property taxes, which somehow rise every year like they're competing in a creativity contest. You've got homeowner's insurance, which seems convinced your house could be destroyed by absolutely anything. And then there's maintenance, because houses are basically giant machines slowly trying to break themselves. Plus, all the little extras nobody warns you about. HOA dues, yard work, pest control, and the sudden moment you realize you now own tools you never wanted to buy. One common guideline is the 1% maintenance rule. It suggests you'll spend about 1% of your home's value each year on repairs and upkeep. So if you buy a $480,000 house, congratulations, you just signed up for about $4,800 a year in maintenance. That's roughly $400 every month, on top of your mortgage, just to keep things functioning. And that's assuming nothing dramatic happens. Now let's do some math. Imagine you earn $85,000 per year, roughly around the median household income in the US. Using the classic 28% rule, you could spend about $2,000 per month on housing. Sounds manageable. Except, in today's market, $2,000 a month might only support a mortgage on a home around $260,000 if interest rates are hovering around 7% and you have a solid down payment. But here's the twist. That $260,000 house requires about $52,000 upfront for a 20% down payment. So before you even start paying $2,000 a month, you need the equivalent of a brand new car sitting in your savings account. Except, instead of driving it, you hand it to a bank so they'll let you pay them every month for the next 30 years. And here's the part that feels almost like a bad joke. If you earn the median income, you probably cannot afford the median-priced home, which now sits well above $400,000. Let me say that again. The person earning the typical income cannot afford the typical house. That's like going to a grocery store where the average shopping cart costs more than your paycheck. So what do people do? They start getting creative. They look at adjustable rate mortgages, they lower their down payment, they stretch the budget. And yes, sometimes these strategies work out fine, if life goes perfectly, for decades. But when things don't go perfectly, they can turn into financial nightmares very quickly. The reality is that figuring out what you can afford requires looking at your entire financial picture, not just your income. Your debts matter, your monthly expenses matter, your emergency savings matter, and your lifestyle matters. Because if your mortgage forces you to live like a monk for the next 10 years, that's probably not the dream you imagined. Most financial planners suggest having at least 6 months of living expenses saved before buying a home. But here's the catch. Once you buy the house, your expenses usually go up, so your emergency fund needs to grow too. It's like trying to reach a finish line that keeps moving farther away. Another important factor is something called your debt-to-income ratio. Lenders typically want your total monthly debt, including your new mortgage, to stay below about 45% of your gross income. Sounds generous until you remember everything that counts as debt. Student loans, car payments, credit cards, personal loans, even that fitness membership you keep meaning to cancel. Now, let's talk about what happens when you actually sit down with a mortgage lender. The experience is surprisingly similar to walking into a car dealership, except the numbers have 2 extra zeros. First, they pull your credit score. This magical 3-digit number determines everything from your interest rate to whether the lender takes you seriously. And a small change can have huge consequences. A difference of just 50 credit score points might shift your rate from 6% to 7%. Over a 30-year mortgage, that tiny change can cost tens of thousands of dollars, all because of something like a missed payment 3 years ago. Now, here's something that surprises a lot of people. Banks today can be incredibly generous with how much they'll let you borrow. Some lenders approve mortgages where your total monthly debts equal 45% of your gross income. Notice the word gross. That's before taxes. After taxes, insurance, and retirement contributions, you might only see about 70% of that income. So suddenly your housing costs could be eating more than half of what you actually take home. Let's picture this. You earn $10,000 per month before taxes. A lender might approve you for $4,500 in monthly debt payments. Sounds manageable, until you realize your take-home pay might only be around $7,000. Now that $4,500 is eating most of your real income. That leaves about $2,500 for groceries, utilities, transportation, entertainment, and literally everything else in your life. Hope you enjoy cooking rice and beans, because you're about to become very familiar with them. Then there's the down payment puzzle. Most lenders prefer 20% down. It lowers your interest rate and eliminates private mortgage insurance. But 20% of a $500,000 home is $100,000. Saving that while paying rent, student loans, and normal living expenses can feel like trying to fill a swimming pool with a coffee mug. So some buyers go with smaller down payments, sometimes as low as 3%. But that means you start your mortgage owing almost the entire value of the home. If housing prices drop even slightly, you could owe more than the property is worth. And remember, you can't just return a house like a bad online purchase. Then come closing costs, which surprise nearly everyone. These usually run between 2% and 5% of the purchase price. On a $500,000 home, that's another $10,000 to $25,000 you need at the closing table. It's basically an entry fee for the privilege of taking on massive debt. Next up, property taxes. These vary depending on where you live, but typically range from 0.5% to over 2% of your home's value each year. On a $500,000 home, that could mean anywhere from $2,500 to $10,000 annually. That's potentially $800 a month just in taxes. You're basically paying rent to the government for land you technically own. Insurance adds another layer. Homeowners insurance often costs between $1,500 and $3,000 per year, depending on location and risk factors. If you live in areas prone to floods, wildfires, or earthquakes, you might need additional policies too. And yes, those cost extra. Now let's return to our earlier example. Someone earning $85,000 per year could theoretically spend around $2,000 per month under the 28% rule. But once you had taxes, insurance, and maintenance, that $1,600 mortgage might easily turn into $2,300 or more in total monthly housing costs. Suddenly, you're spending closer to 35% of your income on housing. That doesn't leave much breathing room for everything else. And repairs? They show up at the worst possible times. Your furnace fails during the coldest week of winter. Your air conditioner quits during a heat wave. Your roof develops a leak during the biggest storm of the year. Homeownership sometimes feels like the house is running a secret competition to see what can break next. Even with the 1% rule, that's still around $400 per month on a $500,000 house. And major repairs, like a roof replacement or new HVAC system, can easily cost $15,000 to $25,000. Now here's the uncomfortable truth most people avoid discussing. In many cities right now, renting is actually cheaper than buying. If renting a home costs $2,800 per month, but owning the same home costs $3,800 once taxes, insurance, and maintenance are included, renting might actually be the smarter financial decision. Yes, homeownership builds equity. But early in a 30-year mortgage, most of your payment goes toward interest. The principal, the part that builds equity, moves slowly at first. So that wealth-building argument is more complicated than it sounds. There's also opportunity cost. That $100,000 down payment could be invested. Historically, the stock market has returned around 7–10% per year. If your mortgage interest is around 7%, you're essentially breaking even financially while taking on much more responsibility and risk. It's like choosing to paddle a kayak across the ocean when you could take a plane. And here's what fascinates me about this entire situation. We're living in a time when a basic starter home costs more than what previous generations paid for their dream house. Yet we're still trying to follow financial advice created decades ago. It's like navigating modern highways with a map from the 1950s. One newer guideline some experts suggest is the 3-30-30 rule. It says, don't buy a home costing more than 3 times your annual income. Have 30% of the home price saved. Keep housing under 30% of your income. Sounds neat and tidy, but let's test it. If you earn $75,000 per year, that rule says you should buy a home costing no more than $225,000. Good luck finding that in most cities. You might have better odds finding an empty parking spot downtown during rush hour, or getting a straight answer from customer support. In reality, many buyers stretch these guidelines. They spend 40% or even 50% of their income on housing because they're desperate to stop renting. But here's what that can look like. Suppose you earn $100,000 per year. After taxes, you might take home about $70,000. If housing costs $5,000 per month, that's $60,000 a year. Suddenly, almost your entire take-home income is going toward housing, leaving maybe $10,000 annually, about $830 per month, for everything else: food, transportation, utilities, fun, life. And that's when the dream house starts feeling a little less dreamy. So here's the honest truth. The amount a bank approves you for, and the amount you can comfortably afford, are often very different numbers. Before signing anything, remember this. Banks are not your financial therapists. They're businesses. They make money from your debt. So treat that approval letter with a healthy amount of skepticism. If this video saved you from a financial disaster, or just made you feel better about renting your current place, hit like and subscribe. Because sometimes the most valuable financial advice isn't about chasing the dream. It's about protecting your future bank account.